When you set out to fix a machine, there's this expectation of pure, clean logic.
Right, a very direct cause and effect.
Exactly. Like you hear a rattle in an engine, you plug in a diagnostic tool, you get an error code, and you just replace a specific belt, and you're good to go.
The problem is entirely visible.
Yeah. But then you step into the world of human dynamics. I mean, leading a team or navigating some massive career transition or, managing an organizational shift, and suddenly that diagnostic tool becomes completely useless.
Completely, because you are no longer managing a static assembly line.
Right. You can't just tighten a bolt. Because the metaphorical belt is currently having a panic attack about a company restructuring.
Yes, and the engine is actively resisting the new direction you're trying to steer it in.
It's messy. Which is why, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring this notoriously messy human side of growth.
It really is a shift from the realm of mechanics into the realm of biology.
It is. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today. We've got a collection of notes on team dynamics, the renowned situational leadership model, and some really grounded human-centered leadership principles based on Bruce Tuckman's classic work on group behavior.
Which is foundational stuff.
Truly. So if you are listening to this, whether you are, say, stepping into a first-time manager role, or you're a young professional navigating your own growth, or maybe you're just trying to understand the shifting dynamics of your local community group, our mission today is to decode why people behave the way they do during times of uncertainty.
And more importantly, how to adapt your approach to actually help them thrive.
Right, rather than just trying to manage them like they're lines of code on a screen.
What's fascinating here is that these sources challenge a very stubborn myth we have about leadership.
Oh, the personality myth.
Exactly. We tend to treat leadership as a fixed personality trait. We label people. We say, oh, she is a visionary leader, or he is a hands-on leader.
Like it's a static identity, like a tailored suit you just put on every day.
Right. But the reality revealed in these frameworks is that true leadership has to be a fluid, highly reactive mechanism.
It's an emotionally intelligent response to what a specific group needs at a specific time.
Yes. Before anyone can adapt their leadership approach, though, they really first need to understand the natural, inevitable stages of human growth.
And that brings us to Bruce Tuckman's stages of team development, which, most of you listening have probably sat through a seminar at some point and seen these on a PowerPoint slide.
Forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, or transition.
Yeah, we see this everywhere. But looking through the sources, there is a massive blind spot in how we actually apply this in real life.
We treat the stages like levels in a video game.
Exactly. We assume it's this linear progression, like, oh, we beat the storming level, so we never have to deal with conflict again.
And that assumption is precisely why so many teams fail. Human growth is not a one-way street.
Right.
A team can be functioning flawlessly. They can be in the performing stage for 3 solid years.
Cruising along.
But the moment you hire one new team member, or honestly, the moment the company introduces a new project management software, the entire ecosystem fractures.
Wait, really? Just from new software?
Absolutely. The hierarchy is disrupted. People don't know how to do their jobs the same way. That high-performing team is violently thrown all the way back to the forming or storming stage.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I like to think of this using an analogy, like building complex IKEA furniture with a partner.
Oh, that's a great way to visualize it.
Right. So forming is when you eagerly open the box together.
Everyone is polite. You're just pulling out the pieces.
Yeah, there's all this initial optimism. You're just figuring out the boundaries. But then you hit storming.
Which is the inevitable argument over the confusing instructions.
Exactly. It's when you realize you used the wrong wooden dowel and personalities clash and progress just completely grinds to a halt.
People start challenging each other.
And here's the thing. When I see a team hit that storming phase, my immediate gut reaction is that the team is broken.
Which is such a common reaction. But storming is actually a biological necessity for group development.
A biological necessity.
Yes. When a team enters this phase, it isn't a character flaw or a failure. Their brains are actively trying to map a new social hierarchy.
Oh, wow.
Think about the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. It perceives the uncertainty of a new project or a new team member as a literal threat to safety.
So they're not just being difficult on purpose.
Not at all. People push back and argue because they are trying to figure out who has power, whose ideas are valued, and whether they are fundamentally safe in this new configuration.
That makes so much sense. I mean, growth is inherently uncomfortable.
It is, and if you try to suppress the conflict of the storming phase just to maintain a polite, happy environment,
Just to keep things nice.
right, that conflict doesn't go away, it just goes underground.
And becomes deeply toxic.
Exactly. So I have to ask the listener, have you ever been part of a team that was just stuck in the storming stage, where the conflict was never actually resolved?
I'm sure everyone listening is nodding right now.
No.
But so if a team is constantly sliding backward and forward through these stages, moving from the friction of storming to the independence of performing, and back again just because a project scope changed, how on earth is a manager supposed to keep up?
Well, they can't be static.
I mean, I don't want to change my personality every Tuesday.
And you shouldn't. But a leader who uses the same approach for a team in storming as they do for a team in performing, that leader will inevitably shatter the group's trust.
Because it's a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly, which is guaranteed to fail. And this leads us directly to the situational leadership framework.
The antidote to one-size-fits-all.
Right. The premise here is that a great leader has to be a diagnostician.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means before you issue a single directive, you have to gauge the situation. You are looking at a few key metrics: the team's confidence, their capability, their emotional readiness, their motivation, and their level of resistance.
So you're taking their emotional temperature.
Yes. And once you read those metrics, you deploy one of 4 distinct leadership styles.
Okay, let's test the mechanics of these 4 styles. Because looking at the notes, the application is where things get really counterintuitive.
It does go against a lot of modern corporate instincts.
Yeah. So the first style is telling, or directing, or guiding. The sources say this is used when someone needs high structure and close support.
Correct.
But wait, I have to push back on this on behalf of the listener. Isn't telling or directing usually frowned upon as micromanagement? Why would that ever be a good thing?
That's the exact pushback everyone has.
I mean, we are constantly told to empower our people. If I hire a really smart young professional, my instinct is to hand them a project and just say, I trust you, go figure it out.
But handing a complex project to a beginner and telling them to go figure it out is not empowerment. It is abandonment.
Ouch. Okay.
We have to clarify the distinction here between capability and confidence.
Right.
A brand new employee might be incredibly intelligent, but their capability for this specific new task is 0.
Because they've never done it before.
Exactly. And because their capability is 0, they lack the historical data to feel confident. They are in the nervous forming stage.
So they don't even know what they don't know yet.
Right. If you give them total autonomy in that state, you induce a panic attack.
Oh, wow. I can actually picture that.
For a beginner, the high structure of the telling style, giving them really clear directions, setting immediate deadlines, showing them the exact boundaries, that actually functions as psychological safety.
It's like a guardrail.
Exactly. You are removing the terror of making a catastrophic mistake so they can focus entirely on learning the mechanics of the task.
Okay, so micromanagement is only toxic when you apply the telling style to someone who already possesses high capability.
Bingo. It's not about the action itself, but the timing of the action.
That distinction changes everything. Okay, so once that new employee starts building some basic skills, what happens?
Then we move to style 2, selling, coaching, or explaining. At this point, the employee's capability is developing. They know the basics now, but the novelty of the new job has worn off.
And they suddenly realize how hard the job actually is.
Yes. Their motivation usually dips here. They might enter the storming phase. They might resist.
So what does the leader do?
The leader has to shift from just giving directives to actively explaining the why behind the tasks. You have to sell them on the vision again.
Rebuild that motivation.
Right. You offer heavy encouragement, but you're still guiding the process.
Got it. And then as they transition out of that frustration and start finding their rhythm, which is norming, right?
Yes, the norming stage.
Yeah.
That's when trust begins growing. And we shift to style 3, participating, collaborating, or facilitating.
So what does that look like day to day?
Well, their capability is solid now, but their confidence might still be a little shaky when making the final call, so the leader steps back.
You stop telling them what to do.
Exactly. You participate. You ask questions like, well, what do you think our next move should be?
You act as a sounding board.
Yes, allowing them to formulate the strategy while you just provide a safety net.
Which finally paves the way to style 4, delegating.
The holy grail.
Right. The team is in the performing stage. They are highly capable, highly confident, and completely self-directed.
You hand over ownership, You provide strategic resources, you clear any organizational roadblocks, but otherwise you get completely out of their way.
If we map these leadership styles onto the emotional stages of team development we talked about earlier, it feels a lot like flying an airplane.
Oh, I like that. Let's trace that out.
Okay, so when a team is forming, taking off from the runway, the captain needs their hands firmly on the yoke. The passengers are nervous. The ascent is steep. Everyone needs the leader to use style one, telling and guiding.
You need someone actively flying the plane.
Exactly. But then the plane hits severe turbulence.
The storming phase.
Right. People are getting bumped around, anxiety spikes, resistance builds. The leader cannot just put on the autopilot.
No, they have to get on the intercom. They have to explain the turbulence, reassure the cabin, and actively coach the crew through the rough patch.
Which is style two, coaching.
Yes. Empathy and listening are crucial here.
Then, as the plane breaks through the clouds into the norming phase, the captain can loosen their grip. They let the co-pilot take the yoke for a while.
They are participating, style 3.
And finally, when you hit cruising altitude at 35,000 feet, the performing stage, you turn on the autopilot. That is style 4, delegating.
It's a perfect mapping. But the problem arises when leaders mismatch the altitude with the leadership style.
Oh, here is where it gets really interesting. Let's apply this to a real-world scenario from the text to see how that mismatch plays out.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine a company going through a massive structural reorganization. Departments are merging, people are taking on completely new job descriptions, rumors of layoffs are circulating.
Everyone is terrified.
Yes. The entire company has been violently thrown out of cruising altitude and straight back into severe turbulence. They are in the storming phase.
A major identity shift.
Right. And if I am a manager in this situation, my instinct when I see my team fighting and resisting the change is to pull everyone into a conference room, lay down the law, and say, listen, this is how we operate now. Get on board.
That instinct to restore order through authoritarianism is incredibly common.
It feels like the right thing to do.
But it is the fastest way to destroy whatever trust you have left.
Really? Why?
Because by pulling them into a room and laying down the law, you are reverting to style 1, telling. But think about it. These are not new employees.
Oh, right.
But
they already possess high capability.
Exactly. What has plummeted is their emotional readiness and their sense of safety. They feel betrayed by the organizational change.
Using the telling style just makes them feel like I am treating seasoned professionals like children.
It creates deep, deep resentment. Now, on the flip side, some leaders swing to the opposite extreme during a reorg.
What do?
They look at their stressed out team and say, listen, we are all veterans here. I trust you to manage your new merged workloads. And then the leader just retreats to their office.
Oh, wow. They try to use style 4, delegating.
Leaving the autopilot on while the plane is flying through a hurricane.
That sounds like a disaster.
The team perceives that delegation as complete callousness. They are drowning in vague expectations and anxiety.
So what should the leader do instead?
What the text outlines is that in this scenario, the leader must shift to style 2, coaching and selling.
You wade into the storm with them.
Yes, you listen to their fears without immediate judgment. You patiently re-explain the why behind the new organizational structure.
And you coach them through the emotional friction.
Exactly. Immense patience and emotional support are required.
The sources bring up another incredibly common scenario that I want to touch on. Dealing with a high performer who suffers a massive failure.
This is a tricky one.
Right. Imagine senior sales director. They've been operating in the performing stage for years. Total delegation. But suddenly they lose their biggest client or, a multi-million-dollar pitch completely falls apart.
Okay. Operationally, their resume hasn't changed.
Right. Their capability is still sky high. They know how to sell.
But emotionally, the trauma of that failure has totally shattered their confidence.
So they've actually regressed out of the performing stage.
Yes. And if the leader doesn't notice that emotional shift,
if they just keep treating them with pure delegation, like saying, hey, go get the next big client, I know you can do it.
then that employee is likely going to spiral into severe performance anxiety.
Because they don't have the confidence to match the autonomy anymore.
Exactly. The emotionally intelligent leader sees that underlying mechanism. They recognize that the capability is intact, but the confidence is fractured.
So they have to adapt.
Right. The leader temporarily shelves the delegation style and drops back to style 3, participating.
So you sit down with that senior director and you collaborate.
Yes. You review the upcoming pitches together. You act as a strategic sounding board.
You aren't telling them what to do.
No, But you are providing a highly visible safety net until their confidence regenerates. And then once they are secure again, you return to full delegation.
You know, executing this kind of real-time diagnosis requires a really highly tuned sensory instrument.
It
I mean,
does.
you cannot just read a spreadsheet to know that a senior director's internal confidence has suddenly fractured, or that a new hire is secretly terrified of making a mistake.
No, metrics won't tell you that.
Which brings us to emotional intelligence, or EQ. The sources point to this as the fundamental engine of this entire framework.
And we often treat EQ as a soft skill, just being nice or being empathetic.
Right, like it's just a personality bonus.
But the literature frames it as a hard diagnostic necessity.
How so?
Emotionally intelligent leadership is the ability to read the physiological and psychological state of your team and then adapt your behavior to lower their threat response.
Okay, so that brings us to psychological safety. We hear this phrase constantly in corporate buzzwords.
Oh, everywhere.
Yeah, and it usually gets defined in a uh, very circular way, like, oh, we need to create a safe space to share ideas.
Which doesn't really mean anything practically.
Exactly. But looking at the mechanisms we've discussed today, it is far more structural than that.
It is. Psychological safety is, quite literally, the biological reduction of workplace threats.
Turning off the amygdala alarm system?
Yes. When a leader adapts their style correctly, they turn that alarm off. Think about it. If you use delegating on a beginner, their brain registers that lack of support as a survival threat.
They feel abandoned.
Right. And if you use telling on an expert, their brain registers the loss of autonomy as a threat to their status.
It's all about matching.
Psychological safety means matching the environment to the developmental stage. It means it is safe to admit you don't know the answer during the forming stage because the leader will provide that guiding structure.
And it means it is safe to debate fiercely during the storming phase without fear of being fired or labeled as difficult.
Exactly. Trust doesn't just happen. It is built intentionally through this adaptation.
So what does this all mean for you listening? I want you to think about your own journey. What type of leadership actually turns off your threat response and helps you grow best?
It's a great question to reflect on.
When you are tackling a subject you know absolutely nothing about, do you secretly crave that clear, highly structured telling phase so you don't feel lost?
Most people do, even if they won't admit it.
And when you are in your zone of genius, do you immediately resent anything less than full delegation?
Absolutely.
Now flip that lens outward. Have you ever utilized the completely wrong leadership style for someone who is relying on you? Have you ever suffocated a high performer with constant check-ins, or maybe stranded a beginner in the deep end under the guise of empowerment?
It is a profound realization for anyone in a position of influence.
It really is.
When a team or an individual is failing to progress, the first place we have to look is not at their inherent deficiencies.
We have to look at ourselves.
We have to look at our own failure to adapt our behavioral style to their current developmental reality.
We have synthesized a massive amount of behavioral theory today. And the overarching thread connecting all these sources is that true leadership is the exact opposite of rigid control,
Control is an illusion anyway.
especially in a complex human ecosystem. True leadership is this relentless responsibility to accurately read the emotional weather of the people around you.
It's a balancing act.
It is. It's the discipline to balance giving explicit directions with offering genuine autonomy, constantly adjusting the dial to help people grow through the necessary discomfort of change.
Adapting to those shifting needs is really the only viable method for steering them through transformation. A leader who insists on a single, inflexible style will simply break when the turbulence hits.
They just snap.
Yes. But an adaptable leader becomes the stabilizing force the team needs to actually survive it.
It takes us right back to our starting point. We are not mechanics replacing belts on a static engine. We are attempting to cultivate a living ecosystem.
And ecosystems are always changing.
Always. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you look at your own teams and communities. We've talked extensively about this journey toward the performing stage. You know, the cruising altitude where the team is fully empowered, highly capable, and executing flawlessly.
It's the ultimate goal of the entire Tuckman and situational leadership models.
Right. But if leadership must constantly adapt to a team's shifting stages, and the team is continually evolving in response to endless external pressures, I mean, new hires leaving, budgets getting slashed, organizational strategies pivoting,
The variables never stop.
never. So the question is, does a group of humans ever actually reach a permanent performing stage?
Oh, that's a brilliant question.
Or is performing merely a beautiful, temporary balancing act before the next inevitable transition throws us all back into the storm? Keep diving deep.